Alright, Joe. Today I want to talk to you about the work ethic of Gen Z and people in my generation versus people that are like boomers and Gen X, and how it's unrelatable what they went through versus what we are going through, and how unrelatable probably what Gen Alpha and Gen Beta would be going through in the future, right? So I want to use the best example I can think of in my life where I kind of looked at something in the eye and said, yeah, fuck that, is when all my friends got like these minimum wage jobs in college and were kind of like looking at me like, dude, you don't have a job right now, right? And granted, I had an internship where I was making $20 an hour during the summer. It wasn't very. I was working like 3 days a week, but basically it was a great pipeline into the job that I eventually got anyway, where I was going to be making well over 50K a year. And when you're making that much, it's kind of like, why the fuck am I going to go take a pay cut for that much? And then I didn't have a car in college, right? And I was not living on campus, so trying to get to wherever the minimum wage job would have just been so extra, right? I mean, if I have to Uber both ways, at that point, Ubers are probably like what, $6 or $7 for the most part. You're pretty lucky if you can find that today, but both ways, that's like $12. That's if you're making $80 by the end of your shift, or $70 or whatever. That's kind of eating into a big portion of it, right? And the time that it takes to get both places, and that's additional time that you're not using for studying, right? So I saw all that shit and just said, you know what, I'm gonna do the calculation and say, the first paycheck I received out of college was $200 or something, and I bought myself a nice computer because I'd been using these burners for a while. And granted, that was the opportunity cost that I could have made, but that was my economic choice, and I chose to not fucking deal with minimum wage bullshittery, and it worked out for the best. All I had to do was kind of tolerate certain things at the time, and to be honest with you, most of our generation isn't really lazy, or at least, on the aggregate, I would say it's not lazy, but we're doing calculations like this every day that are saying, like, why the fuck am I going to have to do this, right? I think, and even getting into the workforce, I remember being like, well, the work-life balance is like a huge thing for the new generation, so you have to respect that more. And it's kind of like the work-life balance was possible before because it was just inherently baked in it. Now we have to work all these additional extra hours to kind of make up for the shit economic situation we're in. And so it's highly unrelatable to the boomers because, yes, then granted, if they had to stay the extra Friday or Saturday, that was part of it, but they were going to be working up the ladder, and working up the ladder was built in and baked in with like company loyalty, right? But today that's not a thing, right? So why am I going to sacrifice myself and put in all this extra effort that they want when I'm not even going to be respected or have any sort of loyalty in the long run, right? I mean, I end up just being a pawn. So if I'm going to look at that, what's the point of putting in all this extra effort into a shit pipeline deal, where I'm not going to get anything in return, at least of substantial amounts, right? So I thought it would be fun to use Grok to do some calculations that I was pretty much doing back 10 years ago. And here we can see that it's going to treat it that I was working 20 hours a week of 2 semesters, right? So if I'm making $7.25 an hour, right, which is basically what I would have been making. If I was making $8, I probably would have been pretty lucky. Basically, we could see that over the course of 4 years, I would have worked 2,400 total hours. It's about 600 hours a year. It's not insignificant. It's something that you have to show up for. And trust me, when you don't have a car in college and you're living off campus, because that's just the nature of the college I went to, trying to get both ways with just Uber is also going to eat into it. So it's not like this is going to be pure profit either. So you can see that Grok thinks I would have made about $4,350 a year, which is, when you're in college, it does kind of feel like a lot of money, right? But you can't really do anything with it. You can't get a car. I mean, you can buy yourself a nice computer. That's the one thing that I really kind of needed back then. My computers were, once my good computer broke, I had to get like a hold me over computer, and that was not the best, but you do what you got to do, and these are the sacrifices that you make to try to keep your mental sanity in the society we have, right? So taxes would have been 10%, which is kind of ugly to think about, actually. We're not going to do inflation adjustment, but it's using 1.33 as the multiplier factor to make it actually like adjusted for today. And the fact that 10 years ago inflation has eaten about 33 or 25% of our dollar is absolutely disgusting. And I've made videos about this, so I'm not going to bash this home here, but the inflation rate that we have today is horrible, and it's not going to get better. And these are all things that we should be thinking about. Don't put your money into banks and have lots of money on hand, because it loses so much value over time through no fault of our own, right? It's complete BS that we have this. Anyway, getting back to the point of the video, I would have roughly brought in just under $4K a year. And of course, it's going to talk to us about the opportunity cost, because I was taking a real degree, not some fucking bullshit degree. I had no spare time my junior year. Once you started taking the actual classes that had to do with your major, junior year was brutal. I got absolutely skull fucked because the system gave me the last choice my junior year and told me to go fuck myself and take the hardest classes altogether. So I was doing something I never do, which is homework 2 weeks in advance so that I have time to study for other tests. That was awful, and I would never want to relive that in my life again. And of course, studying is an important part, but resting and having mental health for yourself. I was playing lots of basketball. That was kind of my activity where I could, like, go do manly activities and take it out. I have a thing built in my system where if I'm not doing something physical, I'm fucking losing my mind within 2 or 3 days. So playing basketball as often as possible is very therapeutic, we'll say. So basically, net tax, I was going to be making $15,660, and the opportunity cost in terms of time was 2,400 hours. It was going to be insane, and that's not worth it, obviously, right? What I did was just take the no cash option, and I had the lower risk to academics, and I got through my degree, not by much, but I made it. And that was the obvious choice, not just better choice. Now, I don't know what job you could have done that would have been 8 to 10 hours. I think there were some on-campus jobs that were like kind of aligned with this kind of small sort of amount of hours, right? And you probably could have made a small amount. And it says maybe acceptable, but you're not thinking about the opportunity cost, man. When I was in college with no car, it was a pain in the ass to get to college, right? So this was going to eat into my time, and that just was not going to fly with me, And this is the calculation we were doing. The math says you were still probably better off skipping the minimum wage job, which I did, and I'm happy I did it because I put all my time and effort into useful things, not just fucking around and like doing just, video games and VR shit, right? I put my time into a craft on the side, and that's what I ended up doing after I got let go of during college. So huge W for me. But this is if you try to explain this to someone who has level 1 thinking and says like, oh, you should be getting a job when you're in college so that you can pay for college, which is kind of laughable. It's just not relatable, right? And our generation cannot possibly face these same circumstances that the boomers did because it's just a very different world that they were born into, So, getting back to the main point, is our generation lazy? Well, no, but it's not doing things in the overt sense that the boomers were. We're having to find other ways to make money, and they just simply don't. The old rules of loyalty and like putting in extra time for the company, those rules don't apply more, right? So when boomers are confused by us wanting to have like the work-life balance, right? It's because we know that we're gonna get fucked. There's no pensions. There's no long-term play with these companies, right? Generally, and a lot of them are handcuffed by taxes and such. Pensions are unaffordable at this point for them. Otherwise, they probably would give it to us, right? They've been penny pinched, and unfortunately, when the top guy gets penny pinched, it usually goes down to the consumers. We've seen, and as socialists tend to not understand if you try to attack the guy at the top or the business person, he just passed the costs off to the customers, and the customers really don't understand this at all, right? We need higher taxes, and then it's like, well, wait, why are my things like all the more expensive now? It makes no sense to me, right? There's multiple layers going on here, and trying to explain this to the average numbskulls, pretty difficult, right? So anyway, the whole principle behind the example I just went through, which is valuing, is this money worth my time, is very much at play for our generation. And we look at things and say, are we getting a bad deal here? If so, I'm not going to play. And that's just straight up how it is, right? Now, the boomer generation and all these other huge government programs that think that we are still going to want to play this game, look at us and go, how do you not want to get a job, right? And it's like, dude, we're not playing this fucking rigged game. We look at a game, and if we know it's rigged, we just don't fucking play. That has been the big thing of our generation. Now, of course, it's not everyone. I'm making huge generalizations here. We all know that the populations have exceptions, and I just want to mention that very quickly. But for the most part, when I look at things like this, I go, I don't want to make $4,000 a year, and especially if I'm going to be making $50,000 in the future, I can delay my gratification, and I can try to get by on what I'm making from my summer internship. And granted, that was a huge key for me to kind of make this decision. But overall, I know I'm getting shafted here, and I'm not going to play this game, and that's what we do. If we see a rigged game, we tend to not want to play the game. When it comes to Social Security, we know that there's going to be nothing for us in a few years here. So by the time that we have it, it's not even possibly feasible for us to rely on it, right? So we know better than to believe all the bullshit lies that the boomers and all these other generations have bought before us, because we know the math isn't mathing, So the overall verdict is, I wouldn't say our generation is lazy, but we are not going to be motivated to work for these fucking ridiculous schemes where we look at it and just go, yeah, the cost, the opportunity cost, the time value of what my money is, it's not worth it here for me. It's a rigged game. I'm not playing a rigged game. You guys can go have fun with that. You want someone else to prop you up and pay for it, be my guest, but it's not going to be me, right? And that's what my generation has done. I feel like our generation is maybe not the best, but we've certainly become attuned to rigged games, and we're very aware that when there's cheating going on and all sorts of that nonsense, we snuff it out, and we are just so done with it that we have very low tolerance for that, right? So I don't know. Again, this video was kind of like a lot of huge generalities. This was me going through my college career, kind of getting shit for, oh, I can't believe you don't have a job, gringo. What are you doing with your life? Why don't you have a minimum wage job? And it's like, I can do the math. It's not worth my time, especially if I put my time into something more productive and develop a skill on the side. Whereas, versus like playing video games. If I was just like playing video games, like doing something kind of useless or whatever, all right, fine, I get it, whatever. I remember the first paycheck that I got after college when I graduated and got my job. It was kind of like I looked at it and went, yeah, fuck y'all. This is exactly right. I delayed my gratification. I did my calculations. I developed my skill. Y'all can look at this and kiss my ass. I hope you enjoyed wasting your fucking time in those minimum wage jobs doing brainless shit where you weren't developing skills or looking at the world and how you could help it. Meanwhile, while I was trying to develop myself and look into like books and other stuff and like podcasts that were useful for my overall education and learning. And I'm not just talking about school. I'm talking about off the books sort of stuff, So anyway, that's my overall verdict. Our generation is not that lazy. Don't feel bad if you had to do these sort of calculations in your life where you had to maybe justify it to someone or a group of people who were like, oh my god, I can't believe you're doing that, right? And you're looking at the game and you're like, I'm not playing that fucking shit. So yeah, you don't need to rub it in their face because overall, you know that you were right, and that's what you should take away from life as well. When you're right, just fucking laugh at other people and be like, how did you guys not see it,